Philip, thank you for coming on, taking some time out of your busy schedule. Gotta start with this. Dustin's gonna spearhead this because he's also a natural competitor as well. I ask this question of everyone that comes on: what's COVID like where you are, and how is it like? Are things open, closed? What's the gym life like, especially with COVID there?
Yeah, luckily for us here in Virginia, I'm in Northern Virginia, Woodbridge area, too far from DC. COVID is definitely ramping up. Like the Omicron during the holidays hit everyone. Like church, we were having a church function and everything got pretty much canceled because of the fact that half the church caught it. My brother-in-law, sister-in-law, they're in Florida. They caught it as well, and their daughters. It seems like my mother-in-law just caught it. So it's like a lot. It's just getting crazy. So I thought I had it. I was getting the runny nose, dry throat, but I didn't have a headache, so I never really got checked. But it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. So
okay.
But the great thing is the gyms are still open here. I've still been going to the gym and training. I'm still able to go to work. We've had a couple of people that were at work and caught it, but they just, quarantine. And I guess now the quarantine is 5 days here. So it's crazy. It just, this is definitely ramping up now, with everything with the new variant. But, in my opinion, I could be wrong. Obviously, it's not as dangerous as the initial COVID. It's more, like a strong flu with a headache and things like that, and extreme fatigue. But yeah, it's still dangerous. But yeah, we're trying to be as careful as possible, wearing masks and all that good stuff.
Gotcha. So you're from the Woodbridge area now?
Correct.
Okay, so my family, I was born and raised, I was actually just there for Christmas, is from Frederick County. And
oh my goodness,
yeah. They told me that it's like there in Northern Virginia, it's real. Like a lot of people are getting it. So what you're telling me, like that just sums it up, because here in Ohio, Dustin, I don't know what it's like out in Washington, but here in Ohio, it's like next to never hear about it anymore.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, it, you wear masks and everything, but Philip, what you just said, like, I have heard no one that's had that much contact with it. Now, I got to ask one more thing on this COVID thing before I get off this train, but does their daughters in Florida, how old are they and how bad did it hit them?
So they're 18 and 21, 22.
Okay.
They got it, and they've had COVID, the original one. So they've had it like multiple times. They're all vaccinated, so it's crazy. I think they actually traveled out of state to the country and came back with it. So, but pretty hard. I think it's actually my sister-in-law that got the worst of it. But for the adult daughters, they didn't get the advanced symptoms, nothing too bad. They were just able to. They just tested because they had a test when they came back. Same thing with my brother-in-law, but my sister-in-law got the worst, and they're in their late 40s and stuff. So
okay,
yeah,
gotcha. All right, well, we got so much to dive into, Dustin. I know you have umpteenth questions for this great man, the GOAT, if you will. You're a four-time Natty O. That's correct.
Well, it's 4-time. I actually won the Masters in 2019 as well, and then turned 50 last year. So I did the Grandmasters and I won that. So, I mean, if you count the different divisions, so 4 times in the Open Pro, time in the 40 and over Masters, and 1 time in the 50 and over Masters.
Oh, nice. Okay. Dustin, dive in on the GOAT here. Let's do it.
But the real thing that says in this generation, if you've arrived, are they making Natty or not videos about you is the real question, which they have.
They have?
Yeah, Philip has this huge list of things, but are they making Natty or not videos about him? And that's the real testament now, apparently, in our generation of bodybuilding. And so he's arrived. No, I guess let's go back a little bit. I think everybody wants to hear a little bit about, I think the philosophy and the early stages. And I'm always interested in that too, as far as, what did the first few years of training, how were you introduced to it? What did that progress look like? And then kind of what stimulated you to actually start to compete and say, like, I want to try to do the bodybuilding thing.
Yeah, for me, and being on this, it's actually very interesting because I've listened to his podcasts and interviews, and mostly his CrossFit base. And I never really had that background. I played football in high school, and I got introduced to weight training there. But my coach, it was Coach Tim Nash. It was Downers Grove South High School, which is in western suburbs of Illinois, Chicago. And that's the first time I was really introduced to hardcore weight training. And they had like a little bit of a CrossFit, feel to it, because we did a lot of clean and jerks, handstand push-ups and things like that. And that's when I really fell in love with weight training. And I saw my physique just, I was 5'9", like 135 pounds soaking wet. I was a receiver, safety, did well, but I ended up going into the Marine Corps. And it was when I went into the Marine Corps, I continued the training. And at age of 21, they had a competition on the base while I was stationed in Japan. And I competed there. People have probably heard this story many times, but that's when the bug hit me. Training on the base there in Japan, it was just the basic stuff. I kind of contacted some of the older guys there and asked them for advice on working out and training, and worked out with them and really got stronger and just built my physique. The first competition I did, I had no idea, while I was there in Japan, what competition really was about. I read magazines, I saw Arnold and, Robbie Robinson, Boyer Cole, all those guys.
Yeah.
But when I stepped on stage, like I said, I didn't know how to pose. I didn't know how to diet. I just went in just raw, didn't even shave the hair off or tan.
Nice.
But I still ended up winning my class, which was crazy. I lost overall to this really ripped Japanese guy. But then, like I said, stepping on stage and my first individual trophy versus, playing football, I got trophies with that because, our team did really well. But having just one just for me was really a big deal. And I just continued on. I did really well in Japan. I started to learn about dieting and posing a little bit more. And I continued to do really well out there until I went and moved back to the States, and I was stationed in Camp Pendleton. And I really started working out different there. I had a kind of like a bodybuilding team on the base in Camp Pendleton. And we ended up doing all the Western Armed Forces shows, a lot of shows in the San Diego area, which, obviously San Diego, California is where bodybuilding is really huge.
Yeah.
We went up to LA, Gold's Gym and Venice Beach and all that good stuff. And they didn't have natural bodybuilding. I knew nothing about that. Of course, I'm lifetime drug free, but it wasn't until 1998, after doing pretty well in the NPC, that I found the ABA, which is the Natural Olympia, the INBA, PNBA. And I did my first show there. I won that show. And from then on, things just kind of blew up because I just kept competing in the shows. I won the Natural Universe and a lot of other shows, and, kind of the rest was history. But my training style has always been pretty basic. It's just, the bro splits of the legs, Monday, chest Tuesday, back Wednesday, maybe 4 or 5 days a week. A lot of supersets, giant sets, drop sets. It wasn't until like later on in my career, like now, where I'm kind of incorporating more of, hypertrophy training, push-pull type. But yeah, that's pretty much it, if that answered the question.
Yeah, for sure. And there's definitely stuff I'm picking out that I'm curious about. So when you first started training, you're around that 135 in high school, how big of a jump did you see in your weight from that point to like, whoa, weightlifting really does something serious to my body and I respond?
Right. Well, when I joined the military, that was back in 1989, the military crushes you. So I didn't really gain a lot of weight then. I probably bulked up a little bit to 145. And when I finally got stationed in Japan, when I started, working out, I kind of went from there to about 160, just working out in the gym. But on the weekends, unfortunately, I was back in my crazy days. I was drinking on the weekends and working out all day during the week. So I maximized my gains until I actually stepped on stage. And at that time, so my friends were telling me, hey, you're ripped, you look good, but you got to eat. You're eating those 3 meals a day. That's not going to work for you. You need to, really put in, high protein, supplementation, et cetera. And really wasn't until I introduced creatine into my diet that I really saw the biggest gains, and just back then, I think I jumped from 160 to 175 within like a few months. And when I finally lost my first competition to this, older gentleman who's a football player that had these big legs, and my legs were lacking at the time. I started really incorporating squats, and as a squats, I really focused on squatting, deadlifting, putting it first in the week so that while I was fresh, that I could just have that mental readiness to just destroy my leg until I was sore for like 3 or 4 days. Young, you can do those things. But I made huge gains in. My legs became my strong point at that point after I trained them for about a year, really heavy. And I ended up facing that same guy again. Even though he beat me the second time, you could tell we were similar body types. He just had the muscle maturity over me. So yeah, the big jump in weight for me from that 135 to about the 175 range happened within like a 4-year period of the Marine Corps. It was great. It was, like I said, all that eating, just, you know, grubbing, taking advantage of training, and it was good stuff.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I know that there's always that window typically where you see that big jump in progress as a natural bodybuilder, I think. Or at least and where it's just incredible. And I think that was one of those big things for me too, is not knowing the nutrition aspect of it, or not knowing how important that was. And then obviously lifestyle was a big thing. So there's those kind of just those little points that you hit in your career where it's like, okay, I can't drink on the weekends like I did anymore.
Yeah.
I can't just eat macaroni and cheese and nachos anymore. Like we go through these kind of stages, you know, as you're progressing, or at least I think if you make the cognizant recognition, like, what do I have to do now to go to the next spot that I want to get to? Because I think this is almost more of a critical thing that you really think about as a natural athlete, because you have to attack it from a natural angle. So what am I looking at lifestyle wise that's going to make me better from here and here and here? And you go through those stages, which kind of leads me to my next thing as far as, did you hit that with training? Did you, or have you kind of just consistently, I mean, that you're hitting your fighting weight at 170 there, 170, 180 is, I'm guessing, is that the heaviest you've been stage wise? Or like, you know, on stage, what's the biggest you've been on stage?
The biggest I've been on stage was kind of, and it wasn't my best. It was close to 188.
Okay.
I actually was able to beef up throughout my career, because at that time when I hit that 175 is when I finally did well in the NPC. So I did the Western Army, like the Gold Gym Classic. I won the novice division, and I got like and the Gold Gym Classic, and that's when I saw, you know, the potential I had to, you know, do well in the sport. And, you know, the judges were telling me, hey, what a potential I had and everything else. So I knew I had to really eat, like you said, focusing on not drinking on the weekends, but I had to live the lifestyle, like relax, not do much cardio. And it's hard too, right? Because you're always running and
Roughing, yeah.
So I became more focused on that. And I really bulked up to the point where I got 200 pounds. I got deployed to Iraq, and I actually ballooned up to like 210. And when I came back from Iraq, I ended up seeing that my weight, that my optimal weight probably would be about a 185. And so I competed at 188. I was too heavy, didn't do as well in that show. And so I really saw that I had to cut down to about 180, 178. And that's when I was, you know, full ripped. And that was kind of my competition weight from, I'd say, 1998 all the way in through, you know, 2012.
Wow. So that segues pretty good into a question that you kind of prompted me. So when you got to that heaviest weight and you're cutting down, and you had an idea like, okay, I'm probably going to be a little heavier on stage now. How big of a gap did you have? I know for, I guess it was I don't know if it was Mr. America, you had a really shortcut time in one of your most recent shows, but at that point, how long are you cutting to get down to that 185 from 210? How much time are you taking to kind of find that optimal weight? Because I know that's always been a thing. If I felt I make progress in the off season and not knowing what that stage weight's going to be, how much time were you kind of factoring in? And I guess leading into exactly that, doing like an 8-week cut, I think, for Mr. America and getting in shape. How have you adapted, I guess, your dieting strategy, whatever you want to talk in that lane, from those early years to now where, 8 weeks to get on that stage is, I mean, obviously, you know, you've been there, you know your body well at that point. I think that's one of the things about this sport is you learn so much internally and externally about yourself. And I can only imagine where you're at when you've done 40 plus shows in your lifetime. You're something of a monk of bodybuilding at this point. I feel like when you compete that much, but anyway, yeah, I guess that transition of dieting and what you learned and how that's been different from early years to now.
Right. Yeah. And the early years, obviously, when you can get away with a lot more. But I was a lot smarter than I always did a lot of research with some of the more successful natural bodybuilders and see how long they prepped. Because I know even in the beginning years for me, I would do an 8 to 10 week prep. And I noticed that my skin folds, the visceral fat wasn't gone to have that thin skin where you can see all the separation and all the detail in your muscles. So when I hit that 210 mark and I came back from Iraq, that was pretty much toward the end of, I think, 2009. And so in 2010, I just decided, hey, I want to get back on stage. I took the whole 2009 off. And it took me about 16 weeks before, I went down from 210 to about 185. And during that time frame, the first show I did, I looked really well. I actually won, but I wasn't at my peak. I used that kind of warm up, and luckily I still did well in that show. And then the next couple of shows, I continued to prep. And so I think that year I had probably prepped for a good 24 weeks total. And, by the end of the year, I was at my peak when it came to conditioning. And I think I ended up stepping on stage at about 180, 178. So back then I really figured and learned that, the longer prep, the better, taking it nice and slow, not rushing it. And unfortunately, this past year for the Mr. America, having only that 8 weeks, I did rush it. And it was one of those things where I wasn't fully ready to do the show. My heart wasn't 100% in it. This is one of those opportunities that I knew that, hey, Mr. America is going to get a lot of publicity, advertisement. You got Generation Iron, IMN Magazine, CBS Sports Network having it on TV. And it was another way of just, getting myself out there to be seen, I guess. And I took that, and my wife was also into it. She said, hey, I should go for it. And so I did it, but I really grinded a little bit too much. I lost a lot of muscle mass because of the 8-week diet and over cardioed, cut my carbs too soon and too drastically. So living, even at my age and even at 50, I still learn that my body can only take so much. And that's the great thing about this sport, is like we're a science project. I feel my whole body is a science project. I'm trying to figure out what I can take, what I can do, how to get myself in shape. But there's a certain set point, I feel, in your body that you can try to grind and lose body fat and lose weight. But, I could have probably stepped on stage a little heavier without losing so much muscle mass within that 8 weeks. But either way, I needed more time in order to really and be at my optimal, my best at that show. And, so a learning lesson. And then at the Olympia, a few weeks after that, I was a lot better, but still, I think the damage was done from just really drastically cutting too much. So, if I compete in the future, my plan is definitely have a longer prep, take it slow, and so I can maintain the muscle mass that I have, because if you do it too drastically, you're going to eat away muscle mass as well as body fat. So,
yeah, for sure. That's a hardcore, and it's a hardcore endeavor in any realm. But yeah, when you do something for 8 weeks, expecting to get on stage and be at that competitive thing, and someone like you who knows what I need to look like on stage at that point, that's a serious undertaking. I mean, just mentally up front too, I'm sure, knowing like I'm going to do this in 8 weeks, and you're all in at that point. That's a little bit of a like messing with you mentally, because
yes,
what you're asking of yourself at that point. It's not a joke, and it's not easy. And I think you also somewhat know, you're making some compromises and a sacrifice, but you don't know what it's really going to be at the end of the day. But anyhow, I mean, it's one of those things too. You learn a lot from those more, difficult times like that too. So, Joe, do you want to cut in? I can keep going all.
Oh no, I got two questions. So one, she goes back a little earlier. You mentioned when you took creatine, that was the first time you actually saw like legitimate, like fast gains. Is that correct? So 15 pounds.
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
15 pounds. Like, back then creatine was still, being studied and researched and stuff like that. But I was looking for anything, because I was doing all the mass gainers and eating, whatever it took to gain that weight. Because I said, if I'm going to compete in the NPC, this is like before fighting the PMP, natural Olympian stuff.
Yeah.
To gain some weight, and as a natural bodybuilder, there's only so much you can do. And, creatine was one of those things that was actually still studied. And when I took it, I just felt that muscle volumization. I did the loading, creatine loading, 5 grams twice a day before working out. And my body just responded to it and kept that in. And I felt like at that time, it really helped me to gain that mass. And I still keep it in my supplementation to this day. It's one of the effective supplements out there, no doubt. And it's, been researched and everything else. So, but that was it for sure.
Yeah. So that was monohydrate then.
Correct, monohydrate.
Okay,
yep.
So have you ever experimented with like HCl or Prealkaline or anything?
I've tried all of them, and really I haven't seen the same effect or the same progress that I did with monohydrate. So monohydrate is very cheap,
Yeah.
any kind of, carbohydrates that can help shuttle it into my muscles. And it's just, if it ain't broke for me, don't fix it.
Absolutely. No. So my second question, you just discussed where you had a very long prep and you came in, you were just ragged and it wasn't exactly the package you wanted to bring. Is in the natural bodybuilding world, is that something where you want to be in shape 3 weeks before the show and then eat your way into the show? Or do you want to pretty much time that down to the week, give or take, and coast in?
I think, mentally, and I think, mentally, I think Dustin brought that up too. Mentally, it really messes with you. If you feel like you're behind, you're trying to wait, the peak week's going to make me, show ready. That's not the way to be. You definitely want to be 2 or 3 weeks, prior to, and basically just coast in, be able to maintain and maybe eat your way into the competition, using your peak week maybe to fine tune a little bit if there's some certain areas. But yeah, you definitely don't want to say, that last week I'm going to be ready, which is what I felt like in Mr. America. I was like, I'm hoping this peak week, will help me to be the way I want to look.
Yeah.
What can happen, because you just really don't know. The Americans tell one story, your mind's going to say something else, and videos and pictures. It's always good to have that peace of mind knowing that 2 or 3 weeks prior to, you can coast in, not have to be drastic and step on stage.
Yeah. Do you do it all yourself, or do you have a coach, or do you have anyone 2 or 3 people they know what my body looks like and they're going to be honest with me?
I wish I had a coach. I've never really had a coach. I had one prep in 2015 where I had someone who, helped me out with my nutrition wise, because he saw that I could have been a little bit fuller, and he pretty much just kept natural foods in my diet and workouts and things like that to work on the areas I can improve on. And that was a big help. But for me, I don't know if it's a pride thing or whatever, but I feel like as a competitor, if you're an athlete, you kind of want to do your prep yourself and be responsible for, your placing. I don't give it to chance to a coach, because I think I know my body well enough at this point, as long as I've been competing. I think maybe in the beginning, when you're first starting out, having a coach is definitely beneficial. And I would definitely recommend it to, any first-time competitors to maybe have a coach for the first 2-3 years, especially a posing coach, someone that could watch you posing and seeing how your physique is changing as you're going through your prep. For me, like I said, I've been successful kind of just knowing my body, knowing how certain foods react for me, keeping track of the measurements, my macros and everything in my workouts. And that's stuff. I've always had really good workout partners, and those partners too are kind of like a free coach,
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
You can work out with and say, okay, hey, what's up? How am I looking? And we can pose together and just have that kind of camaraderie. It's hard to do anything by yourself. But as far as hiring a coach and spending that money for it, for me, that's just not my thing. But I would for others who are just starting out.
Okay. That's all I got so far. Dustin, keep going. I know you have a realm.
I'd have to agree with that too, because I mean, early on, you can save some heartache, I think, or maybe someone that would mentally get defeated. If they had a little bit of guidance up front, it probably fare well for them. But I know I was still very much in the mindset when I was getting into it of, the golden era guys, I guess, if you just want to say it that way, there's no coaches. Everyone's learning how to do all this stuff on their own. And I think that was that was the draw for me, was the learning aspect of it. Then there was so much more, there was so much to learn from both the nutrition side of things and the training side of things. I mean, that's what drove me into doing his career, but it was acquiring that knowledge and having ownership over the knowledge that kept me so motivated, I think. So it was never that someone that had a coach, there's nothing wrong with it at all. And it's one of those things, if you have a kind of a good team in your corner, a good training partners, those kind of things, that can be almost the same thing, if that's available to you. But yeah, I definitely think if someone can, if the coach is helping you learn your body, especially, you're actually learning and gathering knowledge along the way, I think it's super beneficial. But on that same route with training, what were you kind of looking at as far as training? Were you just reading the magazines like everybody else is doing? Were you diving into books? How much were you trying to acquire as far as knowledge around training and figuring those kind of things out? And how did you kind of attack? Did you have weak point? Obviously you mentioned your legs were a weak point early on, or you recognize like, I need to get bigger legs if I'm going to compete with some of these bigger, especially who you're seeing in the NPC. I'm assuming in that era, like you're seeing some
Monsters.
you're seeing some monsters. So like
Yeah.
the mind
Oh,
frame
yeah.
is different when you're on an NPC stage for sure. I guess strategies that you kind of found that worked for you to make improvements, both in weak points and then just, I mean, you're making improvements forever. I mean, for a long time. I know a lot of that is diet and things like that too, and finding a way to fine tune yourself on stage, but you're making legitimate muscle progress over the years. Is there anything that you can attribute in your training to that constant progress?
I think the one thing I can attribute, honestly, is that I'm very hard on myself. And so I always look at so many areas of my physique and like, okay, I'm looking at this guy here and this guy there, and I'm comparing myself. And I'm a fan of the sport, you know, just like you said, the golden era, looking at those type of physiques. I always wanted to look like those guys. And, you know, obviously naturally it's kind of tough to look like a Sean Ray or Flex Wheeler or, you know, Coleman and all those guys. But when I started competing, I just looked at the people on stage that I was, you know, up against.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, okay, I see he's got that. He's also got this conditioning. I need to on that. And I guess I first lost to the football player that was a Marine that was stationed in Japan. I looked at him and his legs were just so phenomenal. And I saw him squatting in the gym because we'd be in the gym at the same time. Looking at him, I said, I gotta do legs first thing. And during the week, while I'm fresh, kill him, you know, and I had to go deep because I was just doing, you know, you'll see that all the time in the gym. These guys are doing squats and you might have 4 plates on there, but they're going like 3/4 of the way down.
Yeah, sure.
Not gonna make any gains that way. So when I started going deep and I saw my glute tie-ins coming in, and, you know, it's just your form is so important. So for me, always form to make sure whatever those points are to get the form down first and then slowly increase your strength. And that really worked well for me in the beginning stages of my training. And then, as I said, competing in the NPC, I'd see those guys and I know that I was very narrow. I'm still like, I'm not blessed with width. I just have, you know, maybe good muscle bellies or whatever, but so I had to get my back wider. I had to get my shoulder caps out there. And those are all the things that I continue to just fine tune until, you know, I got the balance that I needed to do well. And then obviously when I started competing in the drug-free arena, I saw that my physique, because I had done so much to prepare for the NPC, tough. But then as I started doing the tougher natural shows and turning pro, then it's like some of these natural guys are just as good. They can win an NPC show. And so it's been a constant evolution of seeing these new physiques coming out there. I mean, there's so many natural bodybuilders that you probably know, the Doug Millers, the Kyoshi Moody's, and there's so many out there. And then I started competing on a world global stage. You know, I went to Budapest, Hungary, Italy, Australia, all these different countries. And these guys, like, you see in the States, like, okay, you think that's the best of the best, but there's guys just like unreal, and there's a different type of foods they eat. I don't know, they're eating kangaroo meat or, whatever, but they just look different. So I have to compare myself to them. So it's always been me looking at these other competitors, seeing what they have that I can improve myself on, and adjusting my training and nutrition to that.
Sure. Yeah. That's funny. I mean, obviously we've mentioned this on the podcast, but I do think that Sean Ray was one of the early guys that I was looking at too. Ignorance is bliss. I had no idea when I remember my dad had, I think Sean Ray must have been on the cover or something, or inside it was some bodybuilding publication. And I had no idea about anything in that world. So when I looked at that, I was like, oh, if I just keep working hard, I can be Sean Ray 100%. And I don't know how long that perpetuated. Like, I mean, I picked up that magazine in like 2000, I don't know, early 2000s. There was a long stint of ignorance where, you're on social media, you don't know any of this. I wasn't in a gym with anybody that was, hardcore using drugs or anything until I got into my 20s. So I just had no idea. And I really attribute a lot of progress because it's like, I don't look like Sean Ray yet. So I just keep going. And there's a weird placebo effect to not knowing the limitations of the human body. It sounds weird, but when I started reflecting on it, I was like, I think there was a period in high school Once I found protein and creatine, I put on like 80 pounds of muscle. Smaller than you. We're similar in stature. I think I was like $120 when I first started, actually weightlifting, and ignorance carried me a long way, because I was like, these are the top performers. And I was like, this is what you do. You just lift weights and you eat and you'll look like this. And I'm really convinced that helped a ton, not knowing any better. So that's funny.
Totally agree. Yes. And like you said too, I read those magazines. I saw their workouts, their workouts and what they eat. And I followed it.
Yep.
Not knowing that, I need to recover and all that. I'm thinking if it works for him, it's going to work for me. And also too, I think for me, Sean Ring kind of represented something where I thought I had a similar look to him.
Sure.
I want to pick someone that I thought that I can become.
Yeah.
Because I can't become a Dorian Yates. I can't become, Jay Cutler, those types, because of their body. They're just, they're the endomorphs versus me is the, ecto, meso, whatever. But so I chose that and thought that I could do it, with that placebo effect. And then like, oh, that's why I'm going higher. So
that was the equivalent of me finding out there was no Santa. Actually, I don't think I cared that much about that, but I imagine that's what little kids feel like. They're real upset about it was figuring out some of the realities of the sport when I was training in a hardcore gym with people that were like, no man, like this isn't like that's not what's going on there. I'm like, what? I've been lied to. I've been living a lie.
Well, no, I mean, Dustin, I'm the same way. Like I worked at a powerhouse gym. That was my second job for like 5 or 6 years. And I've told you this story before. Like one of my bosses was in the WWE. The other one was like just small and like shredded. And I remember being obsessed because Jay Cutler was the end of the Jay Cutler, Ronnie Coleman era. And Jay Cutler was taking over and Phil Heath was starting to come in.
Right.
And I remember watching those like Jay Cutler motivational videos and being a sophomore in high school. I'm like, I mean, some time, maybe like 25, 26. It was like, oh, and it was the same blunt of reality that hit me when they told me, oh yeah, well, there are drugs involved. There are heinous amounts of drugs involved in that sport. And then that same summer I went to the University of Texas because I had this pipe dream that I would go to University of Texas and be like on the, kickoff team. And I saw their freshmen practice and it was like, oh, there are levels to this game. I'm genetically not there. Like I'm not 6'4", like I'm not 5% body fat walking around. Like, okay. So I totally get where both of you are coming from in that regard. But
it's just, I think it's just part of the thing. I think that's why a lot of stuff sells too. Until you go down the rabbit hole of finding the answers, you can easily get caught up in like the gimmicky side of the fitness industry that we see now, and all the charlatans that exist out there with stuff too. And I think it's one of those things you find what truly works and what truly matters. In the sport, especially when you're committed to staying natural, because you have to exhaust all these other resources and really, really dive down these rabbit holes of nutrition and training stuff, because there's no other answer. There's no other answer. You can't look to another thing to make progress. So it kind of forces you to be smart. And I came across that with natural competitors and shows. Natural bodybuilders are some of the smartest, intelligent individuals I've ever met. If you were to walk into a place and I was just like, hey, that's a guy I'd like to have a conversation with and go out to the bar, just go to a natural bodybuilding show with guys that have competed for several shows and like this is part of their lifestyle. Incredibly intelligent, usually extremely down to earth, very low ego. Like you could probably speak to that. Did you see a different mentality with an NPC vibes backstage to a natural bodybuilding competition backstage?
Totally. And that's what sold me to make the switch. I still have aspirations because when I got started with NPC, it's like, I want to be an IFBB pro. I know I can do it. Like I said, I had that naivete that I can do it because I was actually doing pretty well in some of the shows. And when I did my first IBA, ABA show, it's such a difference, and the thing about these guys, because in the NPC, I'd be backstage, everyone's got their headphones on, covered up. You try to talk to them, like, okay, So, but you go to the natural shows and, they're talking to you, they ask you questions, someone before, they're like, hey, I'm ready from this and this, and they're complimenting. We're not looking for trying to like fight or anything. You say, hey, this person win. And I think it's because also too, a lot of the natural bodybuilders, I mean, we're not in it for the money.
That's it.
We're in it for, we just love the healthy lifestyle. We love just being competitive in an arena where it's kind of fair, that people same level. We all have separate jobs. Not everyone is involved in the fitness industry. I've met, PhDs and, computer science and, all different type of professionals. And so that's their main job. And this is their side hobby that they do just to, stay competitive and stay healthy and something to keep them with the goal. And I think that's an awesome thing. And so, and another thing is the longevity of the sport. We can see in the natural bodybuilding arena where people are in their 50s and 60s still looking great and, just having that vitality of life. And, unfortunately, as you're seeing in the NPC IFBB, it's like on a weekly basis, almost seeing people pass. And it's just, you can say that it's not the drugs or some freak thing, but I mean, if it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, it's a duck, it's just it's rough. So, but yeah, I think it's true.
Yeah. So you kind of touched on it, kind of opportunities. It seems like a lot of opportunities have arisen late in that career, and you're one of those guys who's up there. This is definitely not, I mean, probably not what you would consider now when all these opportunities arose, that this is your peak. Yeah. As far as like age, you're obviously unbelievably competitive, still getting up there and being one of the older competitors, but, those opportunities, I guess, Generation Iron, Mr. America, Mr. Olympia, still, knocking off Rob Terry. You made some of your greatest accomplishments as a competitor later in your career, and it doesn't really seem like you've lost much of a step, but were those the motivations for coming out of retirement? You saw opportunities, you knew, I mean, obviously this becomes a lifestyle at this point, so it's just a matter of you saying, it's not like I'm done competing, I'm not working out anymore, I don't care what I eat. You do it as long as you or anyone, it's like, this is my lifestyle, this is what I do. So it's not this huge endeavor to step out of retirement physically, but mentally, I think that's where that kind of comes from. But were those some of the motivations of stepping out of that? That's kind of an interesting situation to look at from the outside in, I guess, for people who, I guess, have followed you or know what's going on, or have seen Generation Iron, the Natty for Life. It actually seems like the Philip Ricardo story, because you definitely play the underdog in there. I'm a little bit curious too, how much of that was, obviously no one knows who's going to win that show. When they started that filming, it comes off to me like you are so much of an underdog, but still a significant name. I don't feel like they knew that was going to transpire that way. Like, that seems like a truly, in a world where everything is scripted and fabricated, with everything, we don't see honesty in social media, TV shows, anything. I really enjoyed that, because I was like, oh, I don't think they saw this coming. I don't think they saw this coming at all. That was a really cool thing to see, in my opinion, because it seems very honest and genuine and not staged of any way, because I don't think it can be.
You're right. It was unreal, and for me, being a Christian man that loves the Lord, it's like, I feel that God was so much involved in my life during that time frame, because, as the story depicted with, my parents passed away, I lost my job, wrecked my car, like everything bad that can happen. And so the last thing I would even think about doing is competing. But, the Keiko's family, especially was Denise Keiko's, told me, hey, we got Generation Iron. You're one of our big names. We're just trying to see which of our competitors we can have in the film. So if you can send us an interview, we'll send it into Generation Iron, and they'll pick who the athletes are going to be that they follow around. And so for me, I didn't do it with any real thoughts that I can beat Rob Terry, because I've seen him win the previous 2 years and how huge.
Right. Yeah.
And you know what? I'm 48 years old. I don't even know if I can. I just hope I can get in the top 5 and at least be in the movie and talk about my story. Mm-hmm. And that was the real motivation, not necessarily thinking I had a chance to win. And Siobhan was another great natural body, but he was in the show. Adrian Petraria was also, so it was a stacked class. So my thought process is just train hard and see what happens, and just be able to tell my story. And like you said, it was amazing for everything to work out the way it did. That there went from tragedy to triumph. And, I have to attribute all that stuff to God just blessing me in that situation. And so every time these things do come up, I try to be involved, and it's motivation for me, not just because I think I have a chance to win during these things, but it's more of, I feel I have an obligation with the standing that I've been blessed with in the sport to just be around and try to stay relevant and stay, meet people, talk to people. I get so many messages on, Instagram and Messenger and emails, just how people enjoy my career, enjoy the fact that I'm, have strong faith, and the positivity that I try to send out. And it's not me being anything special. It's just the way I've been feeling ever since, I got, Jesus in my life. And I really feel that because of that, I love to just be able to meet people and be a sort of a light in this sport that not always, you don't always see that light coming out of different individuals. So that's pretty much it.
No, I mean, and that's, not just your career, but I mean, who you are as a person. That's definitely why I was quick to reach out to you, because I was like, well, I'm ready to go the bodybuilding direction with some of these interviews. And there's nobody that embodies, I think, that constant positivity. It's one of those things you can tell, or if you spend a lot of time around a lot of people, you don't have to look too deep when you start seeing you talk about stuff, how genuine it really is. You're not playing a part. You're not even trying to represent a sport. You're not putting on Philip Ricardo, the natural bodybuilder, Mr. Olympia. You're who you are all the time. That I think that comes off and is very apparent. You're just a genuine person. So have they released the Mr. America stuff? Is that going to come out soon?
Actually, they did. They had it on TV, and I haven't posted too much about it. And it was kind of weird because I didn't do as well in the show. But once again, they kind of, I think because of Generation Iron, the Natty for Life, they had me a lot in the show as far as like interviews, and they even have like, on the MrAmerica.com page, they've got like starring, Brandon WADA, Philip Ricardo. I was like, oh man, I'm not a star. But it was still like an opportunity. I'm glad that I could be one of the the names that they can have in the show that can hopefully bring people to watch the Mr. America on TV. They also had like a little bit of a series prior to it, and then the Mr. America comes on. So but it was on CBS Sports Network. I think it may be coming on again this weekend. I'm not sure, but and of course they're already preparing for this year, the 2022 version of it, and hopefully bigger and better, and you're trying to get more athletes and make it just really huge. So.
Sure. Yeah, I'm glad to see that happening, and that coming back and kind of being an iconic title as far as natural bodybuilding goes. And hopefully it's up there. Are they, is Mr. America, is that a WADA tested event too? They're trying to hold that standard, like the Yorton and like everything else.
Okay, so that was at the Mr. America last year. Since we had so many different federations involved, so PNBA, which is WADA, the WMBF is kind of sort of WADA. They have their red
sort of,
I think, right?
Yeah.
OCB, they really only do the polygraph. So when I was there, they were trying to get the athletes, and a polygrapher came up to me. He's like, "Hey, you're a pro, right? Come in. You're supposed to do the polygraph." I was like, I'm supposed to be getting the WADA test, not the polygraph, because you have to pay for the polygraph.
Right.
They had them specifically for the OCB. So I think the Mr. America this past year is that they were held to the standards of their federation. And so for NBA pros, we had the WADA test. So it was all so I think that's the way it's going to be even the next year. So yeah, and that's something you have to ask Mark Torriello, the promoter, on how they did it. But I think they were trying to make sure that each federation, were able to, compete at their
sure.
And I don't know if that puts anyone at an advantage or disadvantage, but you can take it as it is. I was just happy to be there.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, organizing a big show like that and trying to get everything. I mean, obviously you want to draw as many competitors as you can. So whatever is going to be most appealing, I can understand that for sure. And I know a lot of those shows too, it's common to have polygraphs up front, and then they'll take the winners. I know this is just a money-based thing. You'll take the winners, the top 3 or whatever, and then you get tested after the show's over. At least that's what I've seen, is you're getting tested, right? As soon as you step off that stage, you're going in the bathroom, no matter how dehydrated you are, and the guy's gonna stand over and look at your shoulders. So now you have dehydration and stage fright playing at the same time.
It's crazy.
I had an awkward, I don't know, this is funny, but what's the longest you stood in there? Because I've stood in there, I'm not kidding, for maybe 45 minutes to an hour with this guy, where I'm like, what do you want to talk about, man? Because this is not happening right now. Like,
yeah, I
remember the first time it was weird too.
It's not the best moment in natural bodybuilding, that's for sure. Luckily for me, I continue to drink a lot of water even as I, get to step on stage. So I don't have a problem, having to, go to the bathroom and everything else. But there's a lot of competitors, like you said. I was judging and part of the WADA testing at one of Brandon Lirio's shows in Connecticut, and there's these guys, they just couldn't go, and they just said, come back, drink some water, do what you got to do. And like this much coming out is bright orange, and he's like, what the heck? Yes. It is what it is, and you have to wait until it gets filled up. You got to fill up 2 vials and then do all the sick. It's a long process, it's an expensive process, but it's what we have to do in the sport, legitimate. So. Yeah,
no, for sure. Because it's one of those things. I'll never understand why someone would want to cheat in a natural bodybuilding show, but it definitely happens. It's definitely out there.
Yeah, it's crazy. The year that I competed in the Generation Iron one, we had one of the top pros there, was top 5, and he failed. This past year, we had a female and a male fail in the Natural Olympia. So they're catching them. It's if you cheat, you're going to be caught.
I mean, that is what you want to see too, as far as you want it. I don't think it's necessarily positive or negative for the sport. It just lets you know there's a standard being upheld. And that's, for someone to put in the sacrifice it takes to get on stage and do all that and travel and all those things at the end of the day. You don't want to be disenchanted by thinking that something's going undetected and someone's getting away with something, for sure. Because that just isn't going to sit well with anyone that's really cares about what they're doing and is doing it the right way. Where do we go from here?
Well, I know exactly where to go from here.
Okay.
I know exactly where to go from here. So Philip, you've been around obviously a lot of like natural competitors. You train with natural competitors. I'm assuming, I'm trying not to make an ass out of you and me, but I'm assuming that you've been around. Yeah, you've been around a lot of, at least a good handful of like enhanced competitors. Is that correct when I say that?
Oh, that's correct. I mean, honestly, I've been to so many different gyms, obviously, throughout my career.
Yeah.
Even in the military, surprisingly.
Oh.
You would be. Yeah. You've seen it. So
yeah.
So you've seen guys, you're like,
cheers. America.
But unfortunately, exactly.
Yeah. Right.
But I've been to Golds. I work at One Life Fitness now, but competitors around, and I know right off the bat, for the most part, or 90% certainty that someone's taking some. Sometimes they even admit it to me, because a lot of them, I don't even know who they are. And to me, and they have respect, and I respect them the same way. You still have to train, you still have to do it. This is a choice that they've made. But with those competitors, some of them I train. I've got like about 14, 15 clients that I train online, personal training. Some of them even ask me to train them. And, obviously it's a lot different trying to train someone like that versus natural. And never really has worked out with the enhanced ones. I've trained like a couple of them, but I typically stick with, just the natural athletes. And I'm not going to turn any of the enhancements down, but I don't think I can do the same, knowing all the stuff they're taking.
No, right.
So, but yeah, go ahead.
That feeds into my question, what's the biggest difference in your experience where you're dealing with someone who is a natural competitor versus an enhanced competitor? Like what is, all the natural guys I've seen, Dustin, you've said this too, and I remember being told this my whole life, where if you're not taking anything, just get strong in movements. And then if you are taking stuff, you can just pump train your little heart off and it works. Now, in your experience, what's the major difference between natural and enhanced?
I think the major difference, honestly, is that you can see the size difference, And the thing is, if you don't train while you're taking that stuff, you're not gonna see it. You have to put in that work. Like you said, the reason why anyone would consider taking that is they'd have to be in the gym 6-7 days a week, you know, 3 hours a day, and push that heavy weight, because they know you can recover, unlike a natural competitor where recovery is key. You know, nutrition, sleep is key, recovery is key. You can recover a lot faster, obviously, with testosterone growth hormone. So those athletes that you see in the gym, they, you know, you'll see them in there and they're crushing heavy weight. You know, they're a lot stronger, a lot bigger. You know, you see like a natural competitor in clothes, we just look like maybe a football player, a small football, maybe a halfback, scat bat or something like that. But if, you know, someone who's on something and they're eating and training like they should, you know, it's a huge, huge difference. They're just monsters in there. And yeah, that's pretty much it. That's the biggest difference. Personality wise, you know, I didn't want to make any kind of judgments on that, because there's going to be some natural people or drug-free people that probably, you know, have attitudes too. So, but that's the only thing I see difference-wise in the gym. So,
okay, so just the amount of sheer volume that not only they can handle, but they actually have to, in some right, do, depending on if they're doing submaximal weights for higher reps or doing heavy weights, they have to have a higher rate of volume because the recovery is just that much more.
Correct. And their physiques, you see them, especially if I see anyone getting ready for competition, they're just so much grainier. They've got different muscle bellies. You can just see it in their physique. It's just a total look, you know. A lot of them have just a lot more thickness from the growth hormone if they're taking that. It's just, yeah, the type of conditioning that they can get depending on what they take. And I'm not even really a you know, steroid guru. I don't know out there, to be honest with you, but just from looking at it, you can see right away for those that are taking the serious stuff and higher level of competition, their physiques are just like on a whole new, you know, level. It's just cartoon times, you know. So
yeah, I mean, do you think with natural competitors, the whole idea of, you know, hit like high intensity training that Mike Mentzer or maybe Arthur Jones or like Dorian Yates, the way he kind of took it to another level, do you think that's a little more behooving than doing like higher volume for naturals?
You know, I've heard naturals doing both ways, the intensity Mike Mentzer type training, and some of it works for them, but I think then the recovery is still going to be the key to that. If you do it and then you're constantly training over and over again, your body the chance to rest, I don't think it's going to be, you know, beneficial. And it also depends on your body type too. If you're someone who has a hard time, you know, losing weight, you know, you're a thicker guy, then that might work, but then nutrition is going to be a bigger part of you getting into competition shape versus someone like me who has a harder time gaining that weight. I can do that and hopefully gain enough strength and power to thicken my physique out and then, you know, kind of cut it down too. So I would probably tell any competitor to try everything, you know, as long as I've been in the sport competing for, you know, 40 years, not 40 years, or, you know, 40.
Whoa now. Whoa now.
That's the video.
It's the Tom Brady of natural bodybuilding. This is
no.
We're not counting him out. If someone's going to do it, he's going to do
That's
it.
right.
But, you know, I think the longer you train, you try everything. I've tried, you know, like I said, you know, the German volume, high intensity training, powerlifting. I haven't tried CrossFit, but I think everything that you try and you see how it affects your body, you know, it's going to be beneficial to you if you just, so.
Yeah.
We just interview CrossFitters. We don't necessarily train like it.
Well, all the guys that I've heard and females I've heard you talk to, very impressive, you know. And I think I remember Sam you talked to, and I was listening to him and saw how his physique is and his wife. And I'm like, wow, you know, I've always been very impressed with CrossFitters. Oh no, low power. And I even have, there's a good friend of mine, William Powell. I don't know, he's out of North Carolina. He's the world's fittest man for a few years, back from maybe 2015 and 19 in North Carolina. And he's of a natural bodybuilding show, would be No Gear Classic, I think, in North Carolina. And he was a competitor that did the Yorton Cup with me. I competed against him.
Interesting.
The guy, he's like maybe 56, 57 years old, jacked, you know. But someone like him, I see the way he trains and the muscle density that he has. You know, he's just one of those freaks in nature. But then I heard Sam, how the muscle ups, and then next thing you know.
No, we lost the sound.
He might get it back. It looks like he's plugging something in.
He's plugging something in.
We'll give him a second.
He's figuring it out. Yeah, I think it's about ready to talk about, say a pec's about ready to get popped.
Yeah. Well, that brings up an interesting conversation as far as all the people that you'd be interested to see get on a stage and the body they've developed.
Mm-hmm.
There we go.
Yeah.
Got a picture. Because obviously some of those people, like some of the CrossFitters especially, they're only a couple weeks away from potentially having a physique they could probably put on stage.
Yeah, I've seen several guys, work with several guys that you think to yourself, you know what, if you just, just took maybe, it's maybe 6 weeks, because you're already pretty much in condition. You just got to dry out a little bit and just kind of understood how to just like deplete that muscle to glycogen load it.
Can you unmute him?
Can I unmute him? Oh, I can ask him to unmute it, but then he's got to unmute it. I can only do so much.
Bingo.
I didn't know what's
up. If you hear me, I'm so sorry, guys.
No,
you're good.
Batteries. I'm like, what the heck? So anyway.
Nope, you're good.
What you were saying? You're talking about Sam and pecs?
Yes. And I know he tore his pec doing the muscle up. And I think when I heard that's one of the really main reasons why I didn't want to try too much CrossFit, because it's, it's very ballistic and it's very, taxing on the body, and my joints and stuff are so old and decrepit now that there's only so much I can do. I got to stick with what works and keeps me, from myself at this time. So, but I definitely have lots of respect for those guys for sure.
Yeah, the three we've had on are very, I mean, Dustin, would you say they're very forward thinking, very intelligent individuals that approach it from a logical perspective and not just let's just throw everything at the wall and just see what happens.
And I think that's one of those things too. If they were just training, I think most of those top end CrossFitters would be injury free. You see them acquire that stuff when they're peaking for a competition or actually in the competition is when you really see that stuff start to accumulate, because you're in an uncontrolled environment. When they go from their controlled training environment to an uncontrolled environment, same thing with bodybuilding. When I see, when you start seeing guys ballistically throw weight around and their range of, not necessarily range of motion, but that can be one of the factors. When you start to see a lot of continued uncontrolled lifting, free falling and squats, whatever it might be, those are the type of things that you see people start acquiring injuries, at least in my experience of watching it happen. And CrossFit just promotes a lot more of that, especially in a competition when it's like, I'm here to win. I could care less what the movements are going to be. I'm doing it. You can control the training environment a lot more.
Yeah, I mean, and again, just to play devil's advocate, to be really fair, the year that there was the massive pec tearing issue, they had like very, very wide rings. So everyone was tearing, and they're all dudes. There's just like muscle bound.
Right.
So they're all tearing because the rings are so far. So just to play devil's advocate, but
that makes sense.
I get it. Yeah. That's a rough sport. It's a sport that's a 90% intensity year-round sport, no matter what kind of phase you're in or whatever, how you're melding it. That's rough. It's
a lot of dedication. I feel like, if I had the time, like my competitive spirit would love to do something like that, because I really feel like CrossFitters are true athletes. Out of all the sports I've seen, like they're, I have a guy, one of my bosses at work, he's a CrossFitter as well. And he does CrossFit, Spartan races, all different type of things. And he amazes me because he's so intelligent. He's, full of energy, nonstop, him and his wife. He's got a young son too. And, we just kind of feed off of this athletic excellence that we've been able to attain throughout the years. And so, but much kudos to those guys.
Yeah. I mean, do you ever see, like, it doesn't have to be CrossFitters, but just athletes in general, and you think to yourself, like, man, they would benefit so much if they knew how to use their musculature?
I do see that. I definitely do see that, because I've seen some people that are, even when I look at my physique and I look at them in the gym, I'm like, holy cow, they're definitely blessed. Yeah. And if they were able to use their muscles, in the proper way, their athleticism would be increased dramatically, in their performance, and I'm not a performance coach, but because I've been doing this for so long and I've also played football before, I can see that, I even saw a guy yesterday, he's like 6'5". You see those memes and those character dolls where there's like a guy has like the tank top, you see his chest and the abs are sticking through the shirt. Yeah. This guy was that in the gym. And I'm like, wow, if he played receiver, he'd be like such a beast, you know. And I don't know if he does or not, if he's playing basketball, but I just saw the way he was working out, and I'm like, how did he get that physique? Because he's not doing a lot
anything.
of the movement. Yeah.
Yeah.
In nature, you know, like, oh man.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, Dustin, when you were at JBLM, did you see anyone where you look at, you're like, that's like the next coming? Like, dude, there was one guy at Bliss. He was the next coming of DK Metcalf.
Oh, I found them all because as
wow.
soon as I saw one of those guys,
Yeah.
I started trying to make my own bodybuilding club at the gym. That was my,
Did you really?
I always have ulterior motives to everything. I'm super genuine, but I was looking for those guys for sure. And working with the MPs, actually, I started to find more.
Yes, because all they do is lift. Yeah.
Because all they do is lift. So when I moved to working with MPs primarily, I got a lot of good training partners out of that group. Which is really good. That's probably the number one thing that I miss about that environment. Yeah. So I did see a fair amount of that. We'll kind of wrap some of this up because I'm sure you got other stuff to get to today, but I got a fun question for you. I'm putting yourself in the lineup as well. You have 5 other natural bodybuilders, and you can pick them out of whatever generation you want. Who do you put on stage as, you know, kind of top? I mean, we'll say 5, the best on stage if you can do it. Because I know this has always been a dream of mine, which I'll make a request at the end of this too. If you guys stay in an open class again, that might be that's the show I've always wanted to do. But I've always wanted to. If I was really competing against other people, because I mean, bodybuilding is one of those weird things. I don't care what side of the sport you're in. You're only competing against whoever shows up at that show. And internally, I'm not competing against any of them. I'm just showing up to be better than I was before.
Right.
And it has to feel right to me. And I know without asking, someone like you stayed in the sport competitively as long as you have, that's what it is at the end of the day. I mean, once you get to your level, you've mentioned some of those other things that you're trying to do and represent the sport and promote the sport in a positive light and those kind of things. But I would love and legitimately to be able to pick out those best competitors and be like, I just want to compete against the best. Like if there's really a challenge to be put on stage, who do you put on stage to just compete against as the best physiques of all time on the natural stage?
Wow, that is such a tough question because I actually think about this, you know, more often than not. So
I do too. It's an interesting thing.
It is. It's such a thing because really, especially nowadays, I get a lot of motivation from seeing, you know, the past, present, future, you know, and to be honest, I've luckily, you know, throughout my career, I've competed against most of these guys that I'm going to mention, but without a doubt, and sometimes for me, it's about timing, you know, because I've been in the sport, I've been able to compete against some guys who I think right now are better than me, like no doubt. But when I competed against them, they were younger and I was at my peak and I was able to you know, take them out. And then there's others that were kind of like peers and, you know, but
you got to put Doug Miller on the stage now with his arms as opposed to young Doug Miller.
Right. Yeah. And Doug Miller, as you already mentioned, he would be like, if I'm picking like 1B, you know, the 2 best that I've been on stage with are Doug Miller and Kyoshi Moody. And Kyoshi Moody is one of those guys who, you know, he stuck mostly with the INBA, PNBA. He did a lot of NPC, even Team Universe, and won his class. But when I went up against him, he's the one competitor, like top pro, that, you know, he always kind of edged me out because of his size and symmetry and everything. And, you know, I was just happy that I was able to get him 1 time, but he got me 4 times. But he is one of those guys, like I said, that has always been a true motivation to me from the very first time we met, because we kind of both came on the scene in 1998 with the INBA, PNBA. So Kyoshi, obviously Doug Miller, he's one of those guys, like I said, I was able to compete against him when he was younger. So that's why I fared well against him. But as he evolved, like his 2014 physique was like, ridiculous with the arms, the chest, the detail, the thickness. So he's one of those guys, when I look at it, he'd be very tough to beat. And I don't know what would happen between him and Kyoshi and myself, but he's a freak of nature, one of the best I've ever seen and competed against. Next on that list, I like Nishak Ochieng. I don't know if you guys know much about him. He's like maybe 5'4".
Yeah.
Well, he won the Natural Olympia in 2020.
Yep.
And he came out with a physique that is unreal. If he were 5'9", no one would beat him, because he has that really grainy, dark skin and muscle bellies that are just like Ronnie Coleman style. You know,
is it like mature muscle?
Oh yes,
mature muscle.
Yeah, it
He's
is.
got more
mature
and more mature.
Okay,
and it's like ridiculous. If you see a picture of him, look him up.
Okay.
Yeah, they'll be making a Natty or Not video. If he was
Okay.
from here, there'd already be multiple videos out on the guy.
Yes. Oh, there
stuff
are
going on.
Okay.
Yeah, he is.
He's one of those guys that you look at and you're like, I can't even be competitive in this sport.
No.
I mean, he's impressive.
Yes, he's quite impressive. And like I said, I was able to compete against him in 2015, and I was able to win. However, like you said, those 4 or 5 extra years that he's put on with the muscle maturity, he is on another level once again. So that's 3 guys. I'm trying to see who would be next, because there are a couple of guys within the WNBF that I haven't had the chance to compete that look really good. There's one guy, I don't think he's competing anymore, but he was great back in his day. His name was Nathan Williams, WNBF pro. That one, he's a bigger guy and he hasn't competed in a few years, but he's excellent as well. I always looked at him as having like an amazing physique. Wow. Let's see, who else would there be? There's so many. I'm going to leave so many people out.
I'm just gonna start making phone calls and harassing these people.
Together.
Actually,
David Kay is another guy from the UK and hasn't competed in a while too. And he was great back when, because he pretty much ruled the WNBF, the DFAC as well, DFAC World. So once again, he hasn't competed in a while, but he's one of those guys with really good size and shape. All those guys really from the UK, surprisingly, they are amazing. And there's a few guys from Australia too. Back in the day, I competed against Michael Waddington and Justin Ferguera. They haven't competed in a while, but they would be up there. But wow, I'm trying to think of some other names, because there's some guys out now that are just really freaky. There's some new guys that were at the Natural Olympia and the Mr. America before. Mr. America, Jason Brew, he's a guy who's up and coming. He's a youngster. He won Mr. America in 2020. And watch out for this guy. I haven't competed against him. He's 32, 33. Mm-hmm. His conditioning is ridiculous. Head to toe, top to bottom, crazy legs, back. I feel like him coming up in the next few years, he's going to be one of the top guys. He actually placed second in the Natural Olympia to Mishak Ochang. So watch out for that guy. He'd be one I want to compete against, but I just don't think I could take him out now.
Okay.
He's a young stud that's really coming up. There's a lot of names out there. And so I kind of brought up the top 3 right now. I definitely have to say it's the Doug Miller, Kyoshi, and Mishak, but I've competed up against them already. There's a guy back in the day, Martin Daniels. I don't know if you know who he is, but I was actually able to compete against him too. He had the most beautiful shape and size out of probably all of these guys. Mm-hmm. His only thing that he wasn't able to do was, and he's an IFBB pro now, but he just couldn't dial it in super crisp to where he would just like blow everybody away. He still did. He still won the world. So he's an IFBB pro, but if he was able to get super sharp, especially from the back and his hamstrings, mm-hmm. He'd be even tougher to beat probably than Doug Miller and Kyoshi. So
wow, that's
So those are some names to look up. Definitely look up Martin Daniels and Mishak and Jason Brew. And that'll be it. So there's a lot of names I'm missing out, but yeah.
There is, and there's a lot of people out there with that are you can find them now because of social media and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But,
there's one guy I left out too, but I think I don't know if he's crossed over yet, but I don't know how to say his name. His name is Niani Biankar. He's an African guy, and he won the WNBF Worlds in 2018, I believe. Mm-hmm. He is just ridiculous. I'll probably have to send you a message. I don't think he's tall. He's another shorter guy, maybe at 5'5", 5'6". Okay. But he has his taper is just sick. I'll send you the names and links of these guys so you can look them up. Craziness. This dude, nearly unstoppable. Yeah. Maybe more than Mishak.
Genetics
So-
are a crazy thing.
Kind of one follow-up question to all those names you just said. There was one you said this conditioning was just ridiculous. Which name was that? Was that Nishak?
No, that was Mishak is there too, but Jason Brew.
Jason
So
Brew.
Jason Brew. Yeah, he won the Mr. America 2020.
Okay.
That year he had an amazing year. He actually won Mr. America. He beat out Siobhan Cunningham. He won the IPE World, which was another Federation World Championship. I believe he won another competition that year. And then he went and did the Natural Olympia, and he got second, very close second to Mishak. So, yeah.
Okay. So with that level of conditioning you're talking about in natural bodybuilding, I know in pro bodybuilding, all the rage now is, you're not conditioned until let me see your glutes.
Yes.
So does he have that? Like, is that level where he can
That is what it is. His
Ronnie
glutes
Coleman
are the best
Oh,
right now. His glutes, hamstrings, and
Yeah.
lower back tie-in.
Yeah.
Sick. He has the most
Oh.
wicked back shot.
Oh,
That's
Dustin,
what-
we got to get him.
Yeah.
Get
Yeah.
him.
He's sick. And he's only like 32, 33 years old. Very
Mhm.
humble guy. Like, he's just fresh on the scene
Mhm.
and crazy. Yeah, I'll send you his name. When you see glutes hamstrings, he's the definition of glutes hamstrings
Okay.
by
Mm.
far.
Okay. And I got two questions
Go ahead.
to wrap this
Go
up
ahead.
with. So
Yeah.
first one, like Dustin knows this about me. I'm a gym equipment connoisseur. I
Glad you-
love
I'm
like
glad you're going
generation. I really do.
Good job.
Generation 1 Knotless, MedX, Avenger, Hammer Strength, Perillo, Nebula. I love it. So if you had to one machine for your back, your chest, and your legs, and it has to be a specific brand, and why?
You write this
are
down.
those
This is a
machines?
beautiful question.
This is a beautiful question. Depending on what you say, I might open up Facebook Marketplace and start diving. So
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not 100% sure on all the brands, so
Okay.
be fair with this. But I know I go to this One Life Fitness down in Stafford, Virginia,
okay.
and they have this back machine where I think it's a Life Fitness machine,
Okay.
and it's where you have the bar, and when it comes down, it comes in this motion,
Mhm.
Mhm.
and it just really hits the lats and the upper back in such a way that no other machine can do.
So it diverges out.
Say it again? Yes, diverges out,
diverges out.
correct.
Okay,
Yes,
okay.
yes. Because in a normal lat put out, you're just coming straight down.
Right.
This one diverges out and squeezes into the lat, so your attraction is more than you get from any other back machine.
Okay.
Is the seat fixed, or does the seat move
The
with
seat is
you?
fixed.
Okay.
Is it a
Yeah.
Cybex?
It could be a Cybex.
It sounds like a
but I
Cybex
don't-
VR1, VR3.
Possibly.
Oh.
I thought it was a Life Fitness, but I know
It-
they have Life Fitness and Cybex there. So try.
Okay.
I don't want to have a segment where people describe the implement and Joe has to guess the brand of the equipment. Oh yeah.
Oh, that
yeah.
sounds
What does the cable stack go to? 220? Oh yeah, that's a side.
Yeah.
It's a 30. It's a 295 with a
He's the
10-pound
detective
adjustment.
of
Because
the
if
machine.
it is, dude, if it is Cybex, Philip, I have one of those, and it is beautiful because it has like
You can bet I'm going to
it
make him
has
send
a
a picture
neutral
of it
handle, it
next
has a
time he's
parallel
on it.
handle.
Yes, that's the
Yeah,
one.
that's a gorgeous machine.
Yes, that's one of my
Gorgeous machine.
favorite back machines. Where I
Yes.
do back at that gym specifically for that machine. So
It's a man after my own heart right there.
yeah, for legs, I mean, pretty much any, forward and rear facing hack squat machine. Because now that I'm older, I have to supplement between doing regular squats because my back and everything else, and I can go extra heavy on that hack squat machine. So I'm not sure. I've seen a couple of them with different brands. It could be a Hammer Strength as well as a Cybex possibly,
Mhm.
but I'd have to check and get back to you guys on that one. So,
Okay.
but that's my favorite leg machine.
Okay. And what's your favorite chest machine?
Let's see. Wow.
It can be a fly variation. It doesn't have to be like necessarily a press.
That's a tough one too, because I've really been focusing more on my upper chest. It's always been something that I've put my number one priority on, just to have that shelf.
Mhm.
And so there's a couple of really good upper chest press machines. And this one might be a Cybex as well. And it actually has two different handle variations. One that's a little farther out and curves into the back,
Okay.
but it's really smooth the way it comes up for your incline bench. So that's my favorite chest machine because, that's an angle that I can't get on normal machines.
Yeah. Okay. So it actually has like a sweeping up.
A sweeping
Effect?
up.
No. Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
Do you know if it has a fixed cam or if it has one of those cams where you can adjust, where you
No,
get
you can't
more?
adjust it.
You
It's
can't
not,
adjust the cam.
it's not Prime or Strive. No, it doesn't sound like.
Yeah, I wish that sounds good though.
Prime and Strive.
That's my favorite, and they're kind of hard to find. But yeah, you can adjust the cam. So if the cam's tip forward,
wow,
at the end of the peak, you're getting more tension.
Right.
And then if you
short
switch it
range
back, you're getting more load out of the front. You can do some dirty things with that, along with putting bands on it to really change when the tension hits, and then how you can get that contraction at top.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, once you have that experience with some of those machines, you get married to them, and you're like, damn it, now I have to have another gym membership.
Right.
I need another gym membership from that one machine.
So true.
Yeah. And then my second question is, we always ask everyone, and I might as well start with this too, like, if in a scenario of a best of 7 half court, who's gonna win, Michael Jordan or LeBron James?
Oh my goodness.
And then we'll go to the fist fight. We just had Chris Spieler on, who's like an OG CrossFitter, like an 8-time games athlete, and he brought right, like, well, they're gonna fist fight. Well, we can bring up both, but then it leads into a bodybuilding question. So knee jerk, yeah.
That is so tough. I am purely a Michael Jordan. I think he's the GOAT.
Nice.
But it's so tough because LeBron is a physical beast, But I just think Jordan, his competitive nature is above and beyond any baller in the history of the sport, And it's like him versus, Mamba, Kobe Bryant, and then LeBron, But LeBron physically, his stature and everything else, beast. But I just feel one-on-one, Jordan in his prime, nobody can take him.
That's exactly, again, man after my own heart, because every time I've been asked that question, I sell Michael Jordan, because you look at his eyes.
Yes.
He'll cut a baby.
I mean,
he doesn't care. Doesn't care.
That is the Philip Ricardo versus Rob Terry story too on some so we can tell you who won.
That's right.
I'll tell you the Rob Terry story. I really use that as, because I'm a Rocky Balboa, fan.
Oh,
Rocky
it's beautiful.
Because you're an adult. You're
I
a
was
man.
Rocky versus Even Drago the whole time I was prepping for that thing.
Yeah.
Oh, it's beautiful.
And he's a great guy. He's a nice guy. I know they portray him as being not so nice and stuff.
Sure.
Great guy. But when I was getting ready for this show, like, all I could do every time I looked at his videos and pictures and Instagram and this and that, it's like, okay, I gotta push myself through. Like, I'm in Russia training in the snow, and that's the only way I'm going to get in that type of shape to beat this guy. And, whatever motivation works, it does,
Right.
Rocky ended the Cold War. You were going to end COVID with beating Rob Terry. That's how it works.
Exactly.
We gotta have Rob Terry on now.
Oh boy. Yeah, you should. He's I think he's getting back into training. Him and his wife just had a baby, their second child. So I think, maybe she's pregnant or about to have a baby, but he's back into hardcore training. Okay. So he may be coming back for the Olympia this coming year. Who knows? Okay. But he'd be somebody to get on. He's a physical specimen. Just for seeing someone live and in person like him, it's like crazy. I've seen him. I've seen like the Michael Hearns and things like that.
Sure.
But he is just, whew.
Yeah.
But when we were on stage, I was just very blessed to be able to take him out, which is, it is what it is. Thank God.
There just isn't very many guys that get to that height. I guess that 6 foot plus that have the genetics of typically the 5'5" to 5'11" ish is that typical bodybuilder. I don't care if you're natural or unnatural.
True.
You have there's a lot more genetic potential, I guess, in that range typically by and large. So when you get a Michael Hearn or a Rob Terry that has those same genetics, those good genetics, but on that stature, it's almost like those are not common genetics on those frames. So that's why those guys are so imposing in real life, because they're the same as most of the really good competitors, but they have that extra height. And most guys that are that tall just don't have the capability of putting on muscle that common CrossFit bodybuilder athletic range of putting on muscle typically exists.
True.
Yeah. You were in the game like in the late 90s, early 2000s. Did you ever make it out to any like Mr. Olympias? Okay, so you have seen Ronnie Coleman in person.
I've seen Ronnie Coleman in person. I've seen him on stage. I've seen him versus Jay Cutler a couple of times. I saw Dexter Jackson, who was obviously short, 5'6", but just seeing him, I took a picture with him one time. I took pictures I was so into it
Yeah.
during the late 90s, 2000s. I was stationed in Pendleton. Las Vegas is like a 4 or 5 hour drive, so I drive there for every Olympia.
Yeah.
I'd go to all the shows in San Diego. So I saw Sean Ray at the Ironman Pro Show. I've seen Chris Cormier. I saw Paul Dillett. Now Paul Dillett is like a Rob Terry, you know,
that's
the freak of nature, right? So I saw all those other pictures with them. I could probably dig them up. I had a lot of old school pictures because we were just a fan of the sport at that time. And once again, just like Dustin was saying, you know, I was like naive to think
right,
you know, natural and stuff. After a while, I kind of figured it out. You know, I even have a couple pictures with Flex Wheeler, and those are all the guys that I just was always at every expo, the Ironman Expo, the Olympia Expos, and I saw those guys up close. And yeah, even the women, you know, like Iris Kyle, can't remember some of the other ones that were just like females that make me, they blow your mind. They make me look like a, you know, a little kid, and it is what it is, you know. So.
I mean, were you there? I believe it was 03. Was it the year that Ronnie wore that like light purple singlet, and he just like,
oh, you're a bigger fan than I am.
I know. Well, it was the year he just like it wasn't even a race. Everybody. It wasn't even a race. Like he just was like laughing on stage and we're just like stomping. Okay.
Oh yeah.
That 03 Ronnie versus 93 Dorian.
Ooh.
Who's gonna win? Just think about this, not posing, just like the mandatories. Who wins off the mandatories?
Because Dorian right there in 93, he looked like he was like a rock.
He was an assassin.
Hard rock. Like he had like zero body fat. It was a stone, you know. And Ronnie, he had a shredded glutes and going up to his back.
Yeah.
Ooh. I mean, honestly, I'm more of a fan of Ronnie's shape.
Okay.
And that's the only reason why I give him an edge. But I can't, it's hard because Dorian was such a beast too. So at that time, that was his peak, obviously. And I probably would still give it to Ronnie.
Okay.
Yeah, probably still Ronnie. I'd have to see pictures of them again, but that is a tough one.
No.
Because Dorian at that time, I was like, no one's going to ever beat him. If it wasn't for the injury that he had to his biceps,
right?
That's when his decline came. That's when I thought Sean Ray should have beat him. I think we all was it 94, 95? I can't remember which year he got second.
Or even 96.
96. 96.
Yep.
96. 96. Yep. That's it.
Sean should have had that one.
Sean definitely won that one. I was like,
he just should have.
Sean was on point in Dorian's bicep.
Yeah.
You want to ask your last question, Joe? Or
that was my last question.
Okay.
That was
no fist fighting octagon questions. If we put Ronnie, I thought you were going to ask if Dorian and Ronnie in 96 got in a ring together in an octagon, who wins?
If it was a tie
and Ronnie wins, I'll tell you. Well, I don't know. Who knows? Actually,
well, Ronnie was a cop. You gotta understand.
That's why I'm saying. That's why I say Ronnie out of that. I think he wins. But at the same time, I don't know.
I don't know if Dorian
like two lions ripping each other.
Dorian
right.
Who actually knows? Oh gosh,
it wouldn't be so good.
Well, Philip, man, I can't thank you enough for coming on. It's super awesome getting to chat with you and dive into some of your insights, and hopefully you got to touch on stuff that you haven't touched on as much in some other interviews and things like that. That was kind of what I was hoping for. So and then just let everyone follow you. Is there anything you want to kind of throw out? I know you do your own show as well, but is there anything else you'd like to highlight and throw out there before we get off?
Yeah, I do have my own show. So if anyone is listening and they, are interested in coming down to Virginia Beach, there could be a lot worse places to come. I have the Philip Ricardo Legends Classic on April 30th, 2022. And it's been going right now for the past 7-8 years. So it's been a true blessing to be able to just, have a show that I can promote natural bodybuilding on the East Coast, because there's not a lot of PNBA, INBA, PNBA shows, and it's mainly, OCB, WNBF. So I just wanted to be able to give the athletes an opportunity to qualify for the Natural Olympia and the World Championship shows that are all over the world, because they don't have that opportunity with the other federations. And they should have Generation Iron at the show, Ironman Magazine. So it gives everyone the opportunity to, get that publicity, to be seen, possibly be on Generation Iron, or possibly be in Ironman Magazine. So that's a big thing. Shout out to my sponsor, Brandon Stewart, with New Dawn Nutrition, Elite Caliber Nutrition. We've been friends since 2015, actually 2013, but I've been sponsored by him. He's a great guy. He's a competitor that's won the men's physique Natural Olympia a couple of times, and Mr. America as well. So, you know, he's a great guy, and I just want to give him props. And, you know, as we talked about, when it comes to supplementation, creatine, everything else, it's really a blessing if you can actually have support from somebody, because it's expensive. You know, if I had to buy all the protein and creatine and BCAAs and all that, you know, even like omega-3s and things like that, it would be a lot more of a financial burden on me if I had to, you know, do that on my own. So it's always really nice to have a friend, someone that can support you and be there for me. We compete at the same shows all the time and just be able to feed off each other. So thanks to him. Big thanks to my wife, who's probably waiting for me right now. She's you know, she's an amazing woman. You know, I've been married. This isn't my first marriage, you know, and I'm doing it right this time. And she's been on my side. She's such a very loving woman. You know, we and her, you know, we both love Jesus Christ. We both love our children. We love the sport. You know, hopefully be able to get her into the sport too, because she knows, you know, how much I'm in. She was in Generation Iron, as you guys saw. And at that time we were disengaged, and now we're married and happy, and we've navigated through COVID and all these other things, you know, but at the end of the day, she's my heart, and I'm just really grateful to be with her. She's my first priority. So if she tells me to quit the game, I'm quitting the game, and I'll just be happy just doing what I got to do, you know, because family is definitely important. And I've learned that, you know, throughout the years. And the sport can be very selfish, just like any athletic endeavor. So I would just say, you know, definitely for me, I'm just speaking on my part, I have to make sure I don't get caught up in too much of this, and stay focused on my family first and foremost. So, because it's like, you know, getting paid, you know, multimedia contracts. Well, they're starting to do some stuff now with the PNBA. That's a whole other story. But I know that she's my heart and my family, and I have to keep that focused. I know you guys are family people as well. So, yeah, and I think and I want to thank you guys for, you know, just doing what you do. I'm starting to follow what you guys have been doing with the interviews, and it's great. Everything is motivation. I always like to stay educated, and you know, keep doing what you're doing. It's very impressive.
Cool. Well, I appreciate it a lot. And yeah, if you do decide to step on the stage in the future, I won't tell anyone, but I want you to tell me, because
I want to know.
like, I might happen to want to do that show, just so I can say that I was on stage with Philip Ricardo Jr. But
there you go. There you go.
Keep a secret.
Yes, I won't tell anybody but you, brother. That's it.
I like training in the shadows before shows. I don't want to tell anyone. I regret not. It made me so I didn't ever take pictures or anything like that.
Yes,
because that was kind of my mentality. I mean, Dorian Yates kind of talked about that too. But with that being said, I know kind of how I approach stuff too. But yeah, it's always one of those things, especially when you ask that question, who would you choose to compete on stage with? I'd like to be able to say that one day I can compete against you if you ever happen to hop up there again. So anyhow,
I think I'll be back. I gotta feel it.
Okay.
That's what I like to hear. I'm gonna make it through a couple more months of raising twins and getting my life oriented in the right direction. And
wow.
Yeah.
I don't know how you do it, man. I heard your interview too. I was like, woo. But you know what? I learned a lot. I'm sorry, I know you got to go, but I learned
no, go.
We're on your time. We're on your time.
You actually taught me a lot. I talked to my wife about that, just the way, you know, you're dealing with the nutrition aspect, and how certain foods can affect their moods and, and things, you know. And the same thing with you, like you incorporate what works for you and your wife with the kids. Right. And I really feel, you know, because kids with, you know, depression and just mood swings, stuff like that, food is so important, activity is so important. So those aspects. So yeah, you guys are education, good stuff.
Appreciate it. Only appreciate it. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, Phil, there's nothing else. Like, we'll let you go, and down the road we're gonna hit you up again to get you on here again, pick more brain.
I love it. Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, good sir. We'll see you soon.
All right, take care.
Take care.
Yeah, you
bye.
too.
All right, bye.
That's good.
This is a smart dude.
I'm glad I pulled out of it. I was really dreading, like 2 days ago. I was full on depressed, dude. Like I was like, this COVID has got to my brain. Like it's doing weird shit to me. And I was like, I don't even want to do this. I was like, I don't even want to podcast anymore.
What
I
the
don't want
fuck?
to I was like, I don't even want to talk to
Is
you.
this
It got to me,
is this
dude.
because I said your idea was a little too Knights Templar for me?
No,
'Cause,
100% not.
you didn't respond back to that. I'm like, oh, I just upset him.
No, it's because
He didn't
it's because no, it's because we moved on. It's because we moved on. We went to absolutely had nothing to do with it. One of the reasons I like you is because you're honest. I don't like friends
try
that
to
don't
be honest, but not
I
trying to be a
don't
cock.
like friends that beat around the bush at all. It's also like if I was gonna compete and send pictures to someone, like I can already know that I was like, I'm sent to Joe because at least he's gonna tell me the truth.
I will. I'll be
Yeah,
your
no.
Neil Hill.
Yeah. I really I'm hoping that he doesn't compete too soon, but I would like to, because the dude's still competitive in an open class 100%. I would like to be able to compete against him, because I don't actually know what he looks like on stage. And he's impressive. It's just when you're at that level with that many good competitors, it's hard to tell how good somebody really is. But I just think he'd be a fun guy to actually compete with on stage. So